Welcome, everyone. And today we have the privilege of having Alan Fadling with us for the conversation. He is the president and founder of Unhurried Living, and he and his wife, Jem, inspires us to rest deeper, live fuller, and lead better. And he is an award-winning author on An Unhurried Life, An Unhurried Leader, and now recently, The Way of Presence. Welcome, Alan, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Emerentia. I appreciate the invitation. I'm glad to have this conversation.
Great. I've said a bit about you now, but I wonder what you would like to say more about yourself.
Well, my wife and I have been involved in our ministry. Our work has been the work of ministry in local church settings. So I've spent most of my adult life as a minister, which of course is a caring profession, perhaps with some overlap to those in your community who are nurses. And so we've spent most of our adult life seeking to care for people, for their spiritual needs, for their needs as communities. And the name of our nonprofit, which is Unhurried Living, is of course based on a couple of books that I wrote. But I think maybe for the sake of our conversation, I see a great connection between the challenge of hurry and the opportunity of presence. I think it's very hard to be present to others in a hurry. And so one of the things we have been learning in our own work is how to slow down on the inside in such a way as to be present to the people that we are with. So that's been a very important journey for us of learning and realizing how what happens in us, the ways in which we become hurried in soul, gets in the way of simply being present in a caring way to people around us.
Wow, and I can just imagine that nurses listening to you will now immediately wonder how they can slow down because nursing is nurses. We are always in a hurry because we need to um, keep to deadlines and get through the day's routine, and we need to look after often a large group of patients. So,
Yes.
and you say that there is a link between slowing down and presence. So, can you perhaps then help us understand how to slow down and also to say what is the link?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I have some friends who are nurses, I have some friends who are doctors. I also have some friends who are hospital chaplains, and I've heard about the busyness level, about the demand on these friends of mine. And I think one of the things that is important to say is that there is a great difference actually between being busy and being hurried. They're not actually the same thing. Busy, that's simply a matter of your calendar, perhaps your responsibility load, perhaps how many people you need to meet with. You can have very busy days and you can be unhurried in the midst of them. This is what we're learning. In our case, we may not be working in hospital environments, but we work with people with all kinds of needs. And we've made many commitments to various projects and various pieces of work. So we can have busy days. But what we've learned is that it's possible to engage a busy day with an unhurried heart. This is what we are constantly working at. And in our case, as Christian ministers, what we've come to believe is that the absolute best model that we have is actually Jesus and his remarkable ability to slow down to the pace of care and to be very present to the one in front of him. Even when his followers wanted to run to the next city where they had important business planned, they had a schedule. They were busy and they wanted to hurry on. And Jesus always seemed to have this ability to go at the pace of care and to be present, even if just for a moment or two, to the one who's crossed his path. So that distinction helps me. I have busy days, but I'm learning how to be unhurried in soul in the midst of a hurried schedule.
Yeah, so you are mentioning an unhurried heart or an unhurried soul, and then also Jesus as an example. And what you are saying is beautiful is to slow down to the pace of care. I think that will be very helpful if we remember that as nurses.
Mm. I hope so. As I say, I've not been a nurse. I've never really worked in the medical profession. But I think anytime we are working with people, the great opportunity, and I love that presence is such an important word for you. I think presence is the ability to slow down inside, to notice another, to
Mm,
listen well to them. And you can do that if you've cultivated an unhurried heart in a few moments. It doesn't, unhurried doesn't mean you need an hour to be caring. Obviously, that would
mhm,
not be very practical in the work that you and your community do. But what I've learned is I can be present answering an email, and it only takes a few moments for me to do it, but I can be present in the way that I even write the words that I write. I'm not just trying to get that off my plate. I'm being present to
mm,
the one who is with me. I can be present to a person in a grocery store who is helping me purchase, the items that I've put into my cart. I can be present to them,
mm,
even though we'll only be together for a moment or two. It's also
mm,
possible for me to just run right past that person, imagining that they're not very important and not be present to them. And so, again, slowing down to the pace of care, to the pace of presence, has been an ongoing practice for me. And much of it is learning how to be mindful of the fact that the people who are crossing my path, whether it's in my professional role or it's just in my everyday moment to moment social encounters, every one of those people is profoundly precious and of great
mm,
worth. And my opportunity to be present to them is a great gift to me, as I hope my
mm.
presence might be a gift to them.
Oh, wonderful. I so agree with you. Is when we see the other person as precious and having value, that helps us slow down and really notice them.
Yeah, I've found that too.
Yeah, great. I'm wondering, nurses who are listening to us now, and they are maybe experiencing burnout or just feeling
Mm.
depleted and giving over and over again, and now asking, yes, I am caring and I am giving, but at a certain point, I just feel so tired and so
Mm.
drained. So, what
Yeah.
advice would you have for them?
Well, it might be very similar to the advice I will often give to those I work with most commonly, which are men and women in ministry leadership roles, whether those are in church settings or in other settings. But they are also caregivers, and they're the giving of care and the giving of care and the giving of care can begin to sort of drain us. So
Mm,
that if we imagined our life being a cup, then our cup would be empty.
mm,
Um, and so, one of the things I'm always saying to those who are involved in caregiving professions is, in what ways are you finding care for yourself?
mm,
Both in terms of your own activities, how do you care for yourself? How do you
mm,
make space for that which brings you joy? How do you make space for what helps you find peace in the face of maybe the worries that cross your path and arise from within you? And so the challenge is we can become so busy and hurried with the caring for others that we struggle to do well caring for ourselves. That's an
mm,
occupational hazard for many of us in caring
mm,
professions. We can be so other oriented, which is a great thing. It's a great gift that we give to others. But to have care to give to others actually requires that I'm somehow receiving care, even if that
mm,
care is just care that I make sure I'm receiving because of I'm involved in an activity that refreshes me, or I'm involved in an activity with other people who are caring presences, right? Caring people in my life.
mm,
That
mm,
somehow my cup of care doesn't become empty. Now, that's a challenge. It may take a bit of work to find those kinds of
Mm.
relationships. And then to be sure I give time to them. But my wife and I both find it important having people in our lives, people who are interested in our lives, who ask us questions about how we're doing. We just the other night had dinner with good friends, and they are caring. We need that because of how much care we give to others. So I think
Mm.
that's maybe a very practical sort of thing in a week to week way. How might we find both personal activities that are caring, that are ways of caring for ourselves, and how might we find people who are caring presences to us
Mm.
with whom we can
Mm.
cultivate friendship and community?
Mm. Yes, that sounds like wonderful advice and so important to do that. So, um, to not see that as something that you are only doing for yourself, but you're actually reloading your batteries so that you can be there for others.
Yeah, in a sense, you could almost say putting myself in the place of being cared for. I actually can do that for the sake of others, even though, of
Yes.
course, I benefit from that. But it can
Mm-hmm.
also be a part of my way of thinking about the work that I do. I want to care well for the people
Mm.
entrusted to me. And to do that, I need to be one receiving care somehow. To me, that's one of the geniuses of Jesus. I mentioned this before, but the book that I recently wrote, The Way of Presence, is rooted in some teachings that Jesus offers about himself. And he describes himself as the way, the truth, and the life. Now, some have taken that and turned it into a religious statement about Jesus, and that's fine. But what I want to
Mm-hmm.
say is the way of Jesus, the truth of Jesus, the life of Jesus is a way, truth, and life of presence. That is his way. That is the
Mm.
reality of who he is. This is the life that he models and we could follow. And so, what I find is that for myself, experiencing God as a caring presence in my life gives me a sense of resource that I then give to others. Others might say the practice of certain spiritual practices enables me to be a person with a full cup. That's just taking a moment to be mindful, taking a moment to let my worried soul just quiet a bit in silence. Taking just a little bit of a walk. It's not designed to, make my heart healthier, but maybe make my soul healthier. A
Mm.
slower walk to just enjoy my neighborhood or a local park or whatever it may be. All of
Mm.
these can fill the cup of our soul in a way that we then have a resource to share as we care for others.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that. As you are talking about that, I actually feel slowing down inside and really
Oh,
just becoming more aware and more calm. So I really think that it will be meaningful to practice that in that way. Thank you.
I'm glad.
I wonder if you would like to tell us more about Unhurried Living and the community that you have, and also the Way of Presence, the book that you recently launched.
Yeah. Well, so our work, Unhurried Living, we come alongside leaders. You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that our little motto, I guess you could say, is that we help leaders rest deeper, live fuller, and lead better. And again, that's very much rooted in our vision of a life that Jesus models, that rest deeper is actually the starting point of our work rather than the collapsing point on the side of the work. A lot of us identify with we get to the end of our day and we're
Mm.
exhausted. And what I'm often trying to say to leaders is actually resting isn't the thing you do after you're caring and working and service. Resting is actually the starting point. Finding a way
Okay,
to
wow.
start your work in rest would
Mm-hmm.
actually enable you to enter your work, even if it's very busy work, very demanding work, from a place of presence, to be a restful presence with others, to be a non-anxious presence with
Mm.
others. It's a remarkable gift. It's not the tangible thing we're doing, whether we're a nurse or a
Mm.
minister or whatever other ways we serve people. But it's your manner, it's your way that you bring into the thing you're doing to express care. It's your way. And so that's what we're doing often, is we're coming alongside men and women in various sorts of caring professions, trying to help give them a vision for this rest deeper as a starting place rather than rest as a last minute collapsing sort of place, because I'm just as you said earlier, my battery is dead. I just need a little bit of juice. I need to plug in my phone for just a moment to get a little bit more in the battery so I can use it for a little more. We're arguing that you could actually decide that resting deeper is a divine gift. It's a starting point. It's where I remember who I am. It's where I experience presence that I can then bring into my life. And so this morning when I rose rather early, part of what I'm doing in the morning is just enjoying the reality of the divine presence. God is present to me. God present to me is a peaceful God, a hopeful God. And I find those things, those realities, those qualities meet me where I need, where I sometimes feel anxious. Or in this very difficult year in which we find ourselves, I find myself despairing sometimes. It's like, oh my goodness, will this ever get better? And so to be in the presence of hope is a great encouragement to my soul. So Unhurried Living is really designed to come alongside men and women in various sorts of caring professions to help them learn this rest deeper, live fuller, lead better, or care better, I suppose you could also say. And so our website is unhurriedliving.com. We have a weekly email that we send to thousands of leaders and caregivers around the world. And we have a number of other opportunities, including an online community that meets on Zoom. It seems like all of us are meeting on Zoom or some kind of video conferencing these days. But once a month, my wife and I both lead 2 different gatherings of leaders to just be present, to share. I'm walking through my first book, An Unhurried Life. My wife is actually working through a book that we wrote together, which is called What Does Your Soul Love? It's really a beautiful little book based on 8 questions that help us enter into a more caring sort of life. But you asked about the book that just released, which is called The Way of Presence. And the subtitle of it is The Empowering Reality of God with Us. So you can imagine that when I talk about presence, it includes the dynamic that wherever I go and whatever I'm seeking to be present to people, I'm also experiencing presence. So when I'm with a person, I'm also in the divine presence. And in a sense, I bring that with me as part of my experience into that conversation or that encounter or that caregiving moment. That gives me a great sense of abundance, that I'm caring from a place of abundance instead of caring in the sense that I just have a few drops left. I'm almost out of gas and I'm just going to give those away and now I'm empty. I'm learning that the divine presence and the abundance of God with us, that idea, the empowering reality of God with us, is an enormously energizing and refreshing and empowering reality. So the book itself, it has 60 small chapters. It's the sort of thing you could start your day in 5 minutes or less. You could read it. It could just refresh a vision of presence as your way of being in the world. And so that's how I wrote it. For busy people who may not be able to sit down long stretches of reading, but just 5 minutes to stop and remember presence.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can just testify after reading the book, it really helped me just doing that, is that I don't have a long concentration span always and not have time. But those 60 nuggets really helped me to get into the discipline again, to talk to God and to be in His presence. And it has made a huge difference in my life. So thank you
I'm
for
so
that.
glad. Thank you for letting me know. I'm glad it's been of help to you.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. We appreciate that a lot.
Well, I'm pleased to have spent this time with you. And I certainly send along my hope and my prayer, really, for those who will hear this conversation, that they would discover a sense of presence with them that encourages and refreshes and energizes them for the caring work that they do as nurses.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye now.